The leaves are falling, it's that time of year. Richie and John's podcast brings us cheer. Halloween treats and Thanksgiving feasts. It's the season to gather and release. 'Tis the season to eat good food. Free spooky sweets to gratitude. Join us as we laugh along. With stories and food, you can't go wrong. Hashtag Richie and John podcast, tune in today for a taste of holiday come what may. Pumpkin spice.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents Richie and John, the podcast that connects you with the people, events, headlines, and lifestyle interests of the global LGBTQ+ community. Here's Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Welcome to another week of Richie and John. I'm John McMullen. I'm here with my co-host Richie Roy. We are joining you from opposite corners of the United States of America. Richie is in the valley that they call Hudson, and I am the valley that they call Coachella. So it is nice to be with you once again. And as we get started, I'd like to remind you that we have a little favor to ask of our devotees. That is that if you like the show, not only do you rate us on whatever podcasting service that you're listening to, but we'd also like to ask you to pass on the word to your friends. Let them know about the program and suggest that they listen to it. You can have them go either to our website or to any of the various podcast platforms that we partner with. And those are a great place to queue them up and have them waiting for you whenever you're ready to listen to our podcast or any other podcast. So just a reminder to do a little housekeeping there before we get underway. And Richie, it is the season to start eating.
It's true. It is that season now that the summer is over and we are deep into fall. It is the harvest, and we've got actually two things coming up. We have spooky season, obviously, which is a time for candy. And then we have Thanksgiving, which is a time for just everything else. Feasting. For feasting, exactly.
Yeah, and for going off those diets that we had to be on all year long in order to have the body to go to the beach.
Exactly. So it is a time to think about, as it gets colder and stuff, the grilling stops for the year. Maybe it's time to kind of bring things indoors and start thinking about stuff like what you're going to cook that's going to warm you up when it's cold out. I mean, I know in the Coachella Valley, it doesn't necessarily get frigid ever, but actually, relatively colder.
This is the time of year that I actually like to grill out here. Put on, in July when it's 197 degrees outside, not so much. I don't need anything else to augment the heat. But this time of year, great grilling weather for us.
Well, love that. I mean, and grilling is always fun, even if you have to throw on a parka to do so. But when my thoughts do turn to Thanksgiving, and I'm curious because everyone has their favorite and least favorite dishes for Thanksgiving. And I'm curious, John, what are the one or two dishes that for you just signal like, when you're filling your plate at Thanksgiving, these are the ones that I can't wait for?
This is a harder than usual question to answer in the last few years because I would say that the primary staple in my diet all year round is turkey. When it comes to eating meat, I would say that turkey is probably representative of around 75% of all my meat consumption.
Wow.
In its various forms. But I don't know, so I still love turkey on Thanksgiving. However, things that make it special, I love stuffing. I don't like the carbs. Plus, we have a very devoted vegetarian in our family. I will imbibe in both the vegetarian and the non-vegetarian versions of the stuffing. So I probably have more than I should. And it'll be interesting to see this year because this year is when I've really exceeded with the dieting. And I don't even know if it's going to be a big consumption holiday for me this year. But, aside from that, I love, now that I've discovered real cranberries over the last 5-10 years, instead of that gelatinous crap that comes out of a dog food can. Prior to that in my childhood, where I wouldn't touch the stuff because it just looked weird sitting there with its little lines from the can going through the gelled berries. I don't know. Gosh, what else? I'm not a big string bean casserole, but it's okay. I don't know what else at Thanksgiving. Apple pie.
Pie, is that one for
Apple
you?
pie,
That's
yeah.
that's a
I
crucial
like
one.
pumpkin pie too, but I've always been an apple pie freak, and I try and reserve because I'm not supposed to be eating sugary things. I try and only have it right around Thanksgiving time. Yeah.
And now you mentioned the stuffing, and I'm curious because there are sort of two big camps of stuffing. There's bread stuffing and cornbread stuffing. Which one is the one that you go for?
Additionally, we have a bread stuffing, although I have had cornbread stuffing on occasion when I have been with other people who have a Thanksgiving gathering, and that's one of the options, and I like that too. So, I mean, I don't have a preference really. I like stuffing. I mean, as a fat boy most of my life, of course, I love stuffing.
Stuffing is one of my favorite aspects of the meal as well. And I actually have never been someone who gorges on Thanksgiving, like a little bite of every single thing.
Yeah.
But I don't go crazy because it is a very filling, a lot of it's very rich, and very fatty, and very salty, which is why, I think that one of my favorite things, and one of the few things I will go back for seconds for actually, is the cranberries, because they have that tart, usually it's, cranberries with a little sugar and some orange peel and some clove, maybe, and allspice. And you cook it down, and it's got this tart bite to it with the acid from the orange. And it cuts through all that richness that everything else has.
Yeah, it's really
And
good.
I love that.
Yeah, me
And what
too.
are your thoughts on, because the one dish that you didn't mention that is kind of in the pantheon is something with sweet potatoes.
No, I have never cared for sweet potatoes my whole life. I know that they're healthier for me. I love mashed potatoes and gravy at Thanksgiving too, but I've really pushed that away from the table the last few years. I'll have a little dab, but the problem is I love potatoes. I can look at a potato, can look at one that is fresh out of the ground, sitting on the counter or sitting on a plate and has not been cooked. I will watch my glucose go up by about 60 points.
Yeah.
All I have to do is look at it. And, I love them, but they're hell for me as somebody who has fought with diabetes for the last, 20 years. So as far as sweet potatoes, I don't know. I mean, I've had them occasionally as fries. I don't like sweet potatoes on their own, like served as like mashed sweet potato. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I
think it's just, I don't know. I used to get fooled into eating them by my dad because I love carrots. And he used to just say, oh, it's just mashed carrots. Yeah.
Mashed carrots. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I like sweet potatoes a lot. I prefer them roasted, and I don't actually care for them mashed. Like, I would rather have them cut up, cubed up and roasted, maybe with some thyme, and some other, some garlic, and roasted in a pan and served up as a side that way, because you already have a mash. You have mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
And
That
so
sounds
two mashed
interesting.
roots is kind of like,
maybe I should give them another try. I don't know.
yeah, I think, why not? But, so Thanksgiving is obviously a big signal event of the fall. Another thing, though, is you start to think about what, kind of fall dishes to make. And I thought that would be a fun thing for us to talk about. But I realized that it kind of ends up falling, no pun intended, back on always the same things: butternut soup, pumpkin this, acorn squash that, soups and stuff. What I think is actually a fun thing to do during the fall and winter, when it gets a little colder and when you're kind of in the kitchen, is to take a cuisine that you maybe haven't cooked a ton of and delve into it sort of over a period of time. And so, get a cookbook that is of a cuisine that maybe you haven't done much with, and just start working through it, over the course of a couple months. And that can be really a fun way to kind of delve into a cuisine. You've got the time, and, you've got the oven going, you've got the stove on, and you can really learn a lot over these months, because, when summer comes around, you're not going to want to be making a slow cooked, simmered Indian curry. It's just not going to happen. But if it's in the middle of the winter, there are certain cuisines that lend themselves to that. I was thinking Indian is one. I think I'm going to work on Indian this year during the season, because I love Indian food, and I've made a few dishes, but there are some great cookbooks out there for doing this project of taking a cuisine and running with it. And depending on which cuisine you want to go with, Fade on Press has a series of books called the blank cookbook. So the German cookbook, the Turkish cookbook, the Thai cookbook. And they're these big, exhaustive, encyclopedic tomes of basically like every dish that that nation has ever made.
Wow.
And they're pretty good books. The Italy one is actually, it's the Silver Spoon, but it's in the same format. And the Silver Spoon is a kind of legendary encyclopedic cookbook of Italian food. But those are great sort of starters. And then, for Indian, I'm using a cookbook by Maya Kaimal that came out somewhat recently that's pretty good. Another cuisine I'm thinking of delving into maybe this fall, winter is Korean. I love Korean food. There isn't good Korean food up here at all. And so I was thinking, well, maybe I should just make it myself.
I don't know that there's good Korean food, period.
Oh, John. Korean's one of my favorite cuisines. I don't know what you're talking about. I love Korean. Have you been to Korean barbecue?
No, I'm not going anywhere where they touch kimchi.
You don't like kimchi? Really? You don't like kimchi?
No.
Okay.
No. And I like pickled things. You know that, but I don't like kimchi.
You don't have to have kimchi to have good Korean food.
You do if you go to a Korean house.
That's true. But I love kimchi, first of all. Like, I eat kimchi out of the jar. I love it. And I love Korean food generally. And there's a cookbook that recently is coming out called Uma. And it is a young chef, and she worked with her mother on basically learning all of the traditional Korean home cooking techniques and recipes that her mom makes. And it's published by America's Test Kitchen, which has amazingly well-tested bulletproof recipes. Their cookbooks, they're kind of aligned with Cooks Illustrated, where, their recipes will not steer you wrong.
Do they have a swimsuit issue for their chefs?
Cooks Illustrated? That would be really funny, actually. Yeah, like a centerfold of like a really beautiful, parsnip, kind of laying there sensuously. But yeah, Uma by America's Test Kitchen, or published by American Test Kitchen, is one that I'm looking forward to getting and working through. And, there's also Mexican. Mexican's another great cuisine that, to work through. And for that, I love Diana Kennedy's cookbooks. Those are great classics. She was this irascible British woman who lived in Mexico for much of her life, or her later life at least, and went around and just looked at how, sort of women in their kitchens traditionally made traditional dishes. She really focused on things like regional cuisines, specific ingredients, and was very influential in terms of bringing Mexican cookery to the U.S. outside of, Tex-Mex. And her cookbooks are great. So I would recommend, if you're going to go Mexican, look at Diana Kennedy's cookbooks. Those are great. Pati Hinich has a number of great cookbooks also for Mexican. But John, if you were to pick a cuisine...
I love Mexican, and I also, I really love Thai food.
Thai food.
That's why I've never really cooked Thai food myself, though. So maybe I should look into getting a cookbook to, try my hand at that. I usually just order or, go out and have them cook it for me and do it right. But yeah.
Yeah. The thing with Thai that's tricky, probably actually easier for you than for me, is there are a lot of special ingredients that, a lot of dishes involve, like things like galangal, kefir lime, curry leaf, a lot of interesting certain Thai chilies that a lot of dishes rely on that are impossible to get up here. You can get some of them dried online. That's a good method. But I would love to make killer Thai food because, living in Queens for 15 years, I had ready access to some of the best Thai food, in the country. And up here, there's like one, junky pad Thai place 20 minutes from my house that I wouldn't even bother eating at. Oh. And I loved a good Thai. I love the soups, like the tom kha coconut milk soup and the curries. And
I'm not a fan of curry, and it's the reason I'm not a big fan of Indian food, because I lived with somebody at one point in time who made it like every meal, and so it was one of those things where for exposure kind of burned me out on it. But That said, I will say that I love going to Thai places. However, we have a problem here in the Coachella Valley again with I don't know what it is about the Thai restaurants, but it seems that the ones that are really good have a problem staying open because the health department finds things that just make your skin crawl when you read about it in the newspaper.
There's a question about that because I think that a lot of times there are health code violations that the way they tally them up and the way that certain things are I don't want to, how to put it. I think that they are unfairly biased against traditional foodways. And I'm not saying that you should have spoiled meat or have roaches running around or something.
It's usually got to do with vermin.
Right. But, a lot of times, places will have infractions for things like, a rag on the wrong side of the.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about those things. They got to the point where there was such an issue with some of the restaurants here in our area that the newspaper began. They didn't even used to do this, and then I don't know, a year or two they began actually publishing what was found wrong, not the the fact that such and such a place got their license suspended for a week or whatever. Now it's pretty detailed, and there are times when I just. After the fourth time that our favorite Thai restaurant was closed for real issues, not for like technical issues, we were like, we can't go back there because we're putting our life on the line. But I mean, there's other places here that we go to and it doesn't stop us totally, but it's so discouraging to know a place does a really fantastic job of making food that's really delicious and finding out that, the key ingredients in delicious may be cockroaches. I don't know.
God, come on. I don't know. I think a lot of it's, I think it's important that we have health inspectors, obviously. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know. Sometimes I think that there is, I don't know how to put it. It's just, I've been to so many restaurants that have, let's say, a B rating and never gotten sick at those restaurants. And I don't know what that means.
You completely went away there. So from the point where you said completely.
Yeah, I don't put a ton of stock into, these ratings. I think if a restaurant gets shut down, that's one thing. But beyond that, I kind of don't want to know. Like, I know that food service is a hard industry. Right. I kind of just I want to pretend like everything's perfect and just leave it at that because the more I know, I'm just never going to eat out at a restaurant. But yeah, so Thai, you mentioned that you're not a big fan of curries. So what do you like to get at Thai restaurants?
Well, I usually like to start off with one of the soups, like the tom yum or, something like that. And I also like a couple of the restaurants that we go to serve as a appetizer. How a lot of people get those lettuce wraps at Chinese places, but they have these dishes that are called larb. And
oh yeah,
have you had larb? And larb is served on cabbage. And it has, the thing I love about it is it kind of has, or at least the ones that I've experienced, have this extra fresh kind of minty lime taste to them as well. And that's a nice change of pace in terms of the flavor palette. When it comes to actually the rest of it, it's not heavy in curry. And if it's not overwhelmed by too much bell pepper, which I also am not a fan of, I'll pretty much try or eat anything. And we always, when we go to Thai places, we usually order 4 or 5 things so we can, we don't have, just one thing. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff and take a little bit of everything. So I don't know. I like it all, really. It's weird because I know it's a big thing for Thai food. Like things that are done with peanut sauce, and I love peanut. I love the taste of peanuts. I love the taste of peanuts, but I'm not a big fan of peanut sauce. And so that's another kind of weird thing considering my passion for Thai food. But I don't know, beef, shrimp, chicken, all those things, the way that they're prepared in various forms. Also like fried rices where they mix it with all of that stuff. It's not healthy for you, but gosh, is it tasty.
Fried rice is something that for me is a treat. I very seldom have it because it's very, for whatever reason, it's very heavy on my system. But like you said, a wonderful fried chicken with a lot of, fried rice with, chicken or shrimp or something, and maybe like pineapple or, various things in there is super delicious.
Yeah, they have one at a couple of the restaurants here that we eat at that they call pineapple fried rice, and it has chicken and shrimp and pork, I think, all three proteins in the mixture of the rice.
Yum.
Yeah.
Speaking of fried rice, there's another, I'm thinking of cookbooks. There's another great cookbook that came out not that long ago by Kenji Lopez Alt on the wok, on cooking with woks. And he's one of the best sort of thinkers on food, best cooking sort of recipe writers out there. He was at Serious Eats for many years, wrote a great book called The Food Lab, and his most recent book is on wok cooking, including things like fried rice.
It's interesting
because
when I moved to New York to work for Sirius Radio, we knew we were not going to have a lot of space in our kitchen. Moving into a New York thumbnail. And so that was when we left Seattle and went to New York that we actually started company with our wok. And I don't think I've had anything that we've, at home wok cooked in that long, which has been 2002.
Oh, wow. Okay.
2 years. Yikes. But
oh my gosh.
I love food that's prepared that way. And, I love Japanese food too. I love to go to those places where you sit around the tables like at a Benihana style restaurant.
Oh yeah.
And get to watch the chef and interact with them and all that stuff.
Yeah, that is fun.
And the food is always very delightful. I like going to Mongolian grills where you can basically pick what you want and they do it up for you.
Right. Well, maybe I'll have to get you that wok cookbook. Maybe it's time to get woks back into your repertoire.
Yeah, I know. The other half has been telling me I need to get out there and walk a lot. So it's just been so hot this summer.
Yeah. But yeah, so, I feel like that's a fun project over the fall is to pick a cuisine, delve into it, have fun with it, get cookbooks, get inspired, find, some people online who are good stewards of a certain cuisine and just delve deep whether it's Italian or Indian or Thai, doesn't matter. There's so many great cuisines, and I think that would be a fun way to spend a couple months.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, what else have you been thinking about while concocting in the kick?
Well, I've been thinking about in terms of other things I've been thinking about. I will say I'm kind of going back to some real classic favorites. I just went to the grocery store and went on, I had no shopping list. I had no strategic plan, and just kind of shopped as I saw. And I got a couple things that I'm really excited about. I did get a butternut squash. So we will be making butternut squash soup. It's happening. It has to happen. I love butternut. And honestly, I like roasting butternut too. I don't know if it's going to ever get to a soup. I might roast it and then just eat it as it is before it ever even gets put into soup form. But I'm going to do something with butternut. And then I saw a really beautiful pork tenderloin. And I used to make this dish back in the day. It was one of the first things when I really started learning how to cook. Because I learned, from recipes from online. I did not learn, on the apron strings of my mom. That's just not how cooking happened in our house. My mom cooked and we ate the food. She did not teach us how to make anything that she made. It wasn't that kind of vibe. Basically, we were banished from the kitchen during cooking time.
I see.
And so when and in college, I ate in the dining hall. And so it really wasn't until I was in my early to mid 20s that I was cooking and actually cooking for myself. And one of the first dishes I remember the recipe was there's a little magazine. It was called like Everyday Food or something like that. It was like a little, it looked like the size of like a soap opera digest kind of thing. And I picked it up and it had a recipe for pork tenderloin. And what you do is you mix up a glaze of crushed garlic, apricot jam, and honey. Apricot jam, a little honey, and Dijon mustard. And you kind of stir those all up into a paste and slather that onto a pork tenderloin and bake it in the oven. And it is so good. I love this flavor because the pork cooks through, obviously, but with the sweet kind of honey / apricot preserve stuff on top, it glazes it and it kind of gets caramelized. And so you have this really delicious porky, delicate porky meat with this wonderful caramelized sweet and tangy sauce that's adhered to it. So when I saw the pork tenderloin, I was like, you know what? I haven't made this dish probably in like 10 years. And I was like, you know what? I have to make that again. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
I just
If
had
you're
a
interested,
great pork tenderloin in Tucson last
oh
week.
yeah,
Yeah, we were out and it was a special one night at a place that we were dining at, and I hadn't had it in a while, so I did order it. But a couple of years ago when I bought an Instapot, that was the very first thing I made. And I went to Costco and I got a pork tenderloin, and it was so good. It was so good. And I don't eat it that often, and I don't know why, because it really is one of those foods that I thoroughly enjoy.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited about that pork tenderloin. You know, another thing I'm actually excited about, I'm having a little gathering on Sunday, and it is now officially charcuterie board season again. I love putting together a good charcuterie board.
Yeah.
And so I have an opportunity to do one for Sunday. So, I usually like to do a meat and cheese charcuterie board, and you can kind of go French, with like maybe French cheeses and pate. You could go Italian with you could go Spanish, with like jamon iberico and manchego. You could go a lot of different directions, or just kind of blend them all. But I think what I'm going to go with is I like prosciutto, obviously, but I really like this sort of more like the salami type meats, like a soppressata or capicola. I like one of those. And then cheese wise, I usually like to do a soft cheese, so like a taleggio or a camembert or a brie, or like a Saint Andre is a good triple creme that I like. And then a harder cheese, so like what would be a good one? You could do a cheddar, a great like a British or Irish cheddar is a good one, or a manchego, something nice. And I like an orange or yellow cheese just to kind of make it more colorful. So like a mimolette is a good French cheese that's kind of a deep pumpkin orange, or an aged Gouda is another good one. And then, some fun other things, cornichon, you got to put cornichon on there. And maybe like some fig jam is a good one, or some quince paste, and some bread or crackers. And I'm excited to make a charcuterie. I've not done one in quite a while, actually.
It sounds like a good time.
Do you like a charcuterie board or not too much?
Yeah, no, I do.
What are your, now do you default, what do you go to first, the meat or the cheese?
Oh, probably more to the cheese.
Yeah. So you go to the cheese first. Yeah. No, the cheese is often, kind of a big hit, but I love the meats and the pates. I love a good pate. I feel like that is something that is underappreciated. I know it's like sometimes you're like, ooh, it's like soft meat paste. Weird. But it's so good.
I'm not much of an appreciator of pates, but
yeah,
I had different ones and they're okay. So I have kind of weird taste buds, So I also don't like Dijon mustard. So unless it's heavily blended with something to give a bite to the flavor, but I don't know. It's just, I grew up on the West Coast. Well, you did too. But it seems to me like Dijon mustards were really something you became accustomed to if you grew up in the East.
Well, there's the great kind of default mustard divide, because I know on the West Coast, like growing up, French's was the default mustard. Yellow mustard, French's yellow mustard was the mustard you had in your fridge. I know at least in New York, and I
or
feel
if you
like
were
maybe
from Seattle area, the Northwest, Nally's, which is a regional brand up there for a lot of those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, once in a while,
but the yellow
French's
mustard is
too.
kind of
yeah.
a West Coast thing. And when I moved out here to New York, pretty much the default mustard when you go to let's say you go to a gas station and they have packets of mustard to put on a hot dog, or you go to a deli and they have mustard on the table,
and
it's going to be golden spicy brown.
Golden.
No, it's golden spicy brown is the go-to. And it's actually, you don't see yellow mustard very often at all out here. And I actually kind of lost my taste for it, because growing up, I was, I'd put that on a hot dog or something. I had it recently and I was like, gosh, wow, it's very acrid. It was actually like I kind of fell out of love with yellow mustard. And I am a spicy brown mustard person now. I don't know what that says, but
see, I'm just the opposite. When I moved to New York, I would chide any restaurant that didn't carry it, and I would keep a pocket of packets that I would get at Costco by the box, because I knew that the restaurants were not going to have yellow mustard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a funny,
And if
funny
nothing
little
else, it's
regionalism.
just fun to kind of give them hell about something, because they think, everybody in New York and in New York restaurants thinks that they're superior to every place. So
Really?
yeah, that was my experience living there.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I mean, there's a little bit of
don't
that.
get me wrong, I loved living in New York City, but sometimes it was, kind of like having to, swallow the idea that they think that the Yankees are the greatest thing since, baseball was invented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a little bit of exceptionalism, and sometimes it rears its head in funny places. Like recently, New York is rolling out trash bins to deal with the trash problem because there's, traditionally New York just they put heaps of bags out on the street, and then the rats tear into the bags, and then there's a rat problem.
Right.
So they're introducing bins, and they had this big press conference where they unveiled the bins, and they literally were playing Empire State of Mind, with a trash bin.
Oh,
and
brother.
Everywhere else in the country's like, we've had those for like hundreds of years already. You did not invent anything with this.
Yeah, welcome to the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
That's
well,
funny.
I hope that everyone has a great food time. This time of year, a great Thanksgiving as you start to plan for that.
What are you going to do for Halloween? You going to have any special treats for the kiddies that come to the doorstep?
The only kitties that come to the doorstep are my 3 kitties that come
but
around for snacks.
I'm going to be at my house on Halloween.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
I have kids. I mean, I don't personally have kids, but I have kids who will be here. So you want to hand out candy?
Yeah, that can
or
be fun.
Would you rather hand out like caramel apples or something like that with razor blades in it? No, I'm kidding.
Razor blades in it, of course, with the razor blades.
That's one of the things that always drove me crazy, especially when I found out that those were all a bunch of lies. There was never never one of those situations where it was just a way to, I think, scare kids into not going out and filling their teeth with sugar.
It was this stranger danger thing. Yeah. This idea that
it was going on in the 70s too.
Yeah. But that stranger danger thing was really captivated the country for many years, and I think did kind of screw with things because it just wasn't real. It just there weren't razor blades hiding in apples. There weren't heroin laced candy bars. It was all fake.
Gays were not jumping out of pumpkins and grabbing snatching kids in their candy.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, we'll have to get some candy to hand out. The ones I like to hand out Reese's cups. I think those are fun, and I think sweet tarts. I like to have a fruity, like a sour fruity, and a chocolate option. So those are the 2 I like.
On Halloween night, we should actually go out to Arenas Road, the big gay here in Palm Springs, and we should just hand out candy and go up to guys and be like, would you like a piece of candy, little guy?
Maybe that's the thing to do.
Hey, little man, want a piece of candy?
Oh my gosh. Maybe. In any case, have a great Halloween, everyone. And we will be back with you on Newsday Tuesday for the latest and greatest that has been happening nationwide and around the world in LGBTQ news. And until then, John, have a great weekend.
We'll do that, and I ask you to do the same, and we bid everybody a fun to do. But before we do, we need to give you a phone number and an email address that you can get in touch with us. Our email is info@richieandjohn.com. That's info@RICHIEANDJOHN.com. And our telephone number is area code
878-768-8825.
That's it. If you forget them, you can always go to our homepage, richieandjohn.com. And there you will be able to find all that information. And you can also, you don't even have to go into your email app. You can just send us a note from the feedback form at the bottom of the page, and it will automatically come to our email. So it's all set right there for you to go and do. And if you missed a past show and you want to catch up on them, you can listen. A lot of them are actually kind of interesting, even though they're not all evergreen. And some of them are funnier than others. But again, we ask you, as we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, if you wouldn't mind, if you like the podcast and you're listening to us like through Amazon Music or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Captivate or YouTube Music or any of those other platforms, you can go in there, and if you wouldn't mind giving us as close to 5 stars as you think that we're worth, we would be very grateful for that. And thank you so much for hanging out with us, and happy fall cooking to y'all.
Indeed. Happy fall cooking, everyone.
Comfort food on chilly nights. Warm your soul with culinary delights. From charcuterie boards to turkey roast, gather round, let's raise a toast. 'Tis the season to eat good food. From spooky sweets to gratitude, join us as we laugh along. With stories and food, you can't go wrong. Hashtag Richie and John podcast, tune in today for a taste of holiday come what may. With Richie and John, it's always fun, sharing meals and stories till the day's done. On the neutral broadcasting system, from kitchen tales to dining themes, we're living out our foodie dreams.